hadn't gone to the doctor in a few years. I didn't have health insurance. And I was working in a restaurant, and I hadn't seen a doctor in so long that I was starting to get anxious. You know, when you just like haven't gone to a dentist, you haven't gone to a doctor in a while, and just every bump or every time your ankle feels weird, it creates so much anxiety, just the not knowing. And so I saved up a lot of money, a lot of money for me, for most people, so I could go to the doctor. And since I worked off of tips, I literally showed up to the doctor with a purse full of cash. And I showed up and I had my appointment. And my doctor said, well, everything seems all right, but I think we're gonna need you to take a blood test, just to make sure. And I sat in the room with my doctor, and I just started to weep because I couldn't afford a blood test. And I had just shown up to the doctor with a bag full of cash to be told that I needed something that I couldn't afford so that I could know if there was something wrong with me or not. And if, God forbid, there was something wrong, I wouldn't know because I couldn't afford to know. I couldn't afford to know if I could do something to take preventative action to preserve my health. And so I sat there and I just wept. And my doctor just gave me a tissue, said, I don't know what to tell you. She said, but this is the blood test that you need, and come back to me if you can get it. And so this was not long ago. And she said, by the way, what do you do? And I said, I'm running for Congress. While now, given the benefit of looking back, of that hindsight, that story feels so much differently now than it did then. Because in that moment, I felt ridiculous. I felt embarrassed, and I felt humiliated. What does a waitress showing up to a doctor with a bag full of cash that can't afford a blood test, what is someone like that doing running for office? That's the exact opposite of power. The exact opposite of power. And I almost felt foolish for saying that I was doing something that felt too big for my britches. But nevertheless, I left and I did what any millennial does, and I Googled free doctor. And I was able to find online at least one of 2 free clinics in New York City that I was able to kind of see online, find online. And I went to the free clinic that weekend. I asked some of my volunteers if they could cover some of the canvassing launches. And I went and I sat in a free clinic, and they told me to show up at 8 o'clock in the morning, and I showed up and I waited 4 to 5 hours from 8 a.m. to noon, 1 p.m. And I saw my neighbors, I saw children, I saw people that didn't look like they needed to go to a free clinic at all, walk in over 4 hours. And finally, my name was called, and I walked in, and I was seen by the generosity of medical students that were willing to give a Saturday or a Sunday to see and tend to people in our community. And they took my vitals, they did my blood test, and everything was fine. Everything ended up fine. And I was able to take that, save up for another bag of cash, go back to the doctor, and get a clean bill of health. And that experience, even though physically things ended up fine, that system is not fine. That is not fine. And I am tired of policymakers and politicians acting like people in free clinics are just those on the fringes that happen to fall through the cracks. Because that's not true. 30 million people in this country are uninsured, and far more are underinsured. Because before I didn't have insurance, I was paying $200 a month for an $8,000 deductible for catastrophic insurance, which ironically meant I couldn't afford to go to the doctor because I spent all my money on my insurance instead of my doctor. And when we talk about the immorality of a for-profit health insurance system, this is what we're talking about. This is what we're talking about. No other developed country on earth has a system as greedy and nonsensical as the healthcare system in the United States.